Well, the best way I can explain how Dare to Worship was birthed was about 3 years ago. I was in a position where I was separated from my husband. We were contemplating divorcing, and I felt lost, felt alone. I was in a very difficult place in life, struggling with depression. I was hurt, I was angry. I specifically remember a time driving home, it was raining actually, and I was pulling into my subdivision and I stopped in front of a light pole. And I remember staring at the light pole thinking, if I could hit this light pole just right, where I don't kill myself, but maybe I hurt myself, this would bring him back. And then I woke up and I realized I couldn't believe I was having that discussion with myself. So I got home, pulled down my garage like I normally do. It's the first thing that I do when I get in the garage, just pull it down. And I just laid on my steering wheel and I was just crying. I was tired, and so I'm just laying there not realizing I didn't turn off the car. And I got into this little daze and I'm kind of dozing off, and I hear my phone ringing in the background, but I didn't move. And then it went silent for a second, and then the phone rang again, and I snapped out of it and I realized what was happening. And I answered the phone, it was my friend, and she said, I couldn't shake you. The Holy Spirit told me to call you. I couldn't stop crying, but I explained to her that I think she had just saved my life, and she decided to come over. She came over, I explained to her what I was going through. Fast forwarding a little bit, a couple of days later, similar situation happened. I come home to an empty house, and I just laid on my living room floor. I was crying, and reality hit me that I was by myself. At least I felt like I was by myself. I felt like I was alone, and I didn't understand why. I didn't have any answers. I didn't want to talk to anyone because I felt like no one would understand where I was. The next day, another friend called and said, hey, I want you to come to church with me. We have service on Friday. I need you to come. You need to be there. And I said, I don't know, because at that particular time, I just wanted to be by myself. I don't want to be bothered with anyone. But I decided to go. And that was probably the best decision that I made. That night, they had an altar call. I went up to the front, and this lady was praying for me, and she was grabbing my hands. And she was praying, our eyes were closed, and I'm like, Lord, I just need a word from you. And the pastor came up as we were all praying, and he said, there's someone here by the name of Kelly. Now, mind you, my eyes were closed. And so I opened one eye, and I'm like, did this man just say Kelly? And he said it again. This lady's still praying for me, and so I dropped her hands, and she said, is everything okay? I said, he just said my name. And she said, you're Kelly? I said, yeah, I'm Kelly. And he said, God gave me your name on Wednesday, and I prayed for you, and he told me to lay hands on you tonight. Now, mind you, Wednesday was the same night that I was laying on my living room floor, crying. Feeling alone, and just that alone blessed me to know that at a moment where I felt by myself, God had a complete stranger interceding for me. And so he ministered to me, he prayed for me, prophesied over me. I'm thinking he's going to give me a word of restoration, saying, hey, God's going to restore your marriage, this, and that. No, he didn't say that. But what he did tell me was to be an open canvas and to allow God to do what he was doing in my life. And so I left that night encouraged, and I said, Lord, what is it that you want me to do? And he said, go back to the basics. And I said, well, what's the basics? And that was worship. And it put me in the mind frame of David. You know, when he was gonna fight Goliath, they tried to put on this big armor for him, but it was too heavy for him. And he had to go back to what he was familiar to, and that was those rocks and the slingshot. And for me, worship was my rock and my slingshot. And that was my weapon of warfare. And that is when God presented me with the challenge, or the dare, to worship him outside of my feelings, outside of my circumstances. Because the truth of the matter is, worship is not circumstantial. Worship is solely based on who God is, and he doesn't change. I use Dare to Worship as a platform to challenge others to do the same thing. It takes the form of a concert, but it's really a choice. Dare to Worship is a movement. Just as God presented the challenge to me, it's the challenge I now present to the world.